So we all know that we can expend a lot of energy and emotional angst around trying to hold on to or trying to contain the parts of our lives that are clearly falling apart around us. Whether it's a business or a relationship or a lifestyle or a community, a project, anything that we've given our love and our heart and our energy to building, and that in some way kind of helps define who we think we are in the world, when that type of stuff starts to collapse, it can be a really scary time. But things do fall apart. We know that. It's the nature of life. It is in a constant state of change. And the things that used to serve us, who we were, maybe need to fall apart in order for us to really step into who we truly are and are becoming. So how do we stay in our grace? How do we stay in our peace? How do we stay in our power when really significant parts of our lives are collapsing around us? Well, let's explore. Hello and welcome back to episode 3 of Consciously, Peacefully, and Powerfully Alive with me, Chess Edwards. This is the channel where we really explore what it is to live with a much more of an awareness of all the rich dynamics of this human experience. It's good to have you back. And it's good to be here with you. It really, really is. And if you like these videos, please do give them a thumbs up. And if you haven't subscribed to the channel, please do so. And that way you'll be alerted when new episodes come up. So, this time of coronavirus and all the major significant dynamic changes that are happening in so many aspects of our lives, I thought it would really be a good time to explore about how we can really maintain that sense of peace and stability and equanimity when significant parts of our lives are changing around us. The work that I do here in Sedona and all over the world when I travel to do retreats and to work with people, the primary work really is around how to live in this dynamic world of change in a more graceful and equanimous way. I love that word, equanimous. It's that equanimity, that state of balance and stability. And most of the people that I work with really come to me at a time when a significant part of their lives has fallen apart. Whether it be a relationship or a business, a lifestyle, income, when something, health, when something that had been stable and they had been relying upon betrays them in some way and really falls apart. That's the time that people come. And it's often a time of anguish. It's a time of, I wish this hadn't happened. I wish it wasn't happening. And sometimes, not always, but sometimes the people are coming and saying, help me put it back together the way it was, the way I want it to be. But the real freedom and the real work is in helping others, as I have had to discover it in my own life, and I'll tell some stories about that today, about remaining in a state of grace and allowance as we navigate the inevitable changes of our lives. So I wanted to start off by sharing a book that I recently read that really had a significant impact on my life, and I want to share it with you. It is a book called Falling Upward by Richard Rhor, and that's Rhor. And the gist or the foundation of the book, the main idea behind the book is that where we grow You look at most anybody's life that has been significantly impacted, that they've grown, they've evolved, they've matured in a significant way. That upward movement into the higher realms of our consciousness and of our life experience typically happen through our falling. They happen through when life suddenly asked us to really pay attention in a much deeper and a more significant way. And if you look at just about every, heroic journey across all religions, across all different communities and cultures, you find that the story is kind of the same every time. That the protagonist in the story meets their greatest shadows, their fears, their difficulties. But it is in meeting those and in overcoming those that they really find a deeper level of grace and a deeper level of faith. The other thing that this book talks about, and I love this, and this is kind of the gist of what I wanted to share today, is that Richard in this book talks about life happening in three different stages or three different components of a normal life. And in the first part of life, there's order. There's a sense of order, a container. Family is a container, a sense of order. Community, religion, school. There's different components of our lives that hold us and contain us and give us a sense of place to work within, so that we can start to develop this personal identity, so we can start to work within this world and play within this world. You got to have a ground. You got to have a something that you feel safe within. Now, for a lot of people, that sense of self that is developed within a sense of container, a sense of order, for a lot of people, their sense of self is in their rebellion to that order, into the rejection of that order. And that also creates a sense of identity. That order, that it makes a difference in our lives. It has a significant impact in our lives. But at some point, we start to recognize that order isn't really ours. It was something that we were given. It was something we were born into. It was something that we found ourselves a part of. And again, it had some value in it, in helping shaping our sense of identity. But if we're lucky, that order, the components of that order, often will start to fall apart. Because we start to find that as we mature, that they don't really belong to us. And maybe it's a lifestyle, a relationship, work, some dynamic of belonging that isn't really true to our authentic nature. It was something that we adapted to, that we became a part of, that we learned how to work within, but it may really not be that which nourishes the real depth of our soul, the real depth of ourself. So that order often needs to fall into disorder. So the order starts to move into disorder. Obviously, that's scary. Obviously, that is disconcerting. It's something that we don't want to have happen. It creates a lot of a sense of unknown. But the beauty is that when those aspects of the order, the containers of our life, start to fall apart, we get to consciously reorder our lives in a way that is more in alignment with our spiritual maturity, with our deeper, authentic sense of the true self. That true self that gets to reorder a life that is true to our authentic nature. And that's beautiful. That's really the opportunity we have in this life, to allow the things that served us earlier but don't really serve the maturing aspect of ourselves, to let those things fall apart so that we can step into and create and reorder our lives in a way that is more in alignment with our truth. There's a beautiful model by Joseph Campbell called The Hero's Journey. And I'll see if I can put a link to it down below. I've got another video on here where I describe this model in a little bit more detail. But the model basically is saying that we think that life should go from A to B. And wouldn't that be nice, right? If there were no hiccups, if it was just, I've got my goal, I've got the things I'm working on, I've got the parts of my life that I've established with my work and my family and my community and my faith and all of these aspects of my life, they're set in place, they're not moving, they're not budging, and wouldn't that just be the good life? But what we find is that that isn't the way that things typically happen. And in Joseph Campbell's model, he talks about the herald. It is a dynamic event. It is a happening in our life that shifts, that moves us off of that stable trajectory. And he talks about it casting us down into what he calls the pit of despair. And I think we all know this feeling, right? The pit of despair, this place where we're going, I don't know that I can handle this. This is big. Everything that I was counting on has fallen away. The ground feels like it's been gone to quicksand underneath my feet. I don't feel stable anymore. I don't know what I can hold on to. There's a real sense of loss and it being adrift. And that's a very disconcerting place to be. And what we're talking about today is starting to become comfortable, becoming okay with that place of not knowing, that place of when life has crumbled. But initially, when we're not used to it, it's this pit of despair and we don't know if we're going to survive. But we do. And we start to move out of the pit of despair. We go down into the pit of despair. And now we're moving back out of it. We're starting to find some light. We're starting to find some traction about how to get back to more of a state of comfort and stability and safety. And what's beautiful is that as we come back, we find some things. We find some gifts that would not have been available to us on that straight line. And what we find is we find our faith. We find, what did we have to reach into? What did we have to mature? What did we have to discover? What level of faith and understanding and devotion and connection did we need to find and enliven and awaken within us in order to survive, in order to manage or navigate the really difficult waters that life will continue to move us through from time to time? So we find our faith. We also find our strength. We find like, wow, I was able to survive that when I didn't think I could. I was able to come back. I was able to get my feet under me again. I was able to get back to my routines of health and meditation and presence and relationships. So we find our faith, we find our strength, and we find our allies. We find those that really are our tribe, our pod, as Ram Dass put it, I think primarily because he was living in Maui, and there are a lot of whale and dolphin pods around. But we find our allies, we find those with whom we feel a real resonance and richness and connection in life. So it's a wonderful model to recognize that had things stayed on the even keel, we actually couldn't find the depths of our strength and our faith and really come to know our allies in life. Let's start to come into a grace and an acceptance and an allowance of the parts of our lives that are shifting, to move, to fall apart if they need to fall apart. It's how we grow. It's the only way we're truly going to expand and mature and evolve in our lives. I want to tell you a couple of stories. This is around what I call the gift of austerity. It's a gift when parts of our lives are taken away from us. Because had they not been taken away from us, we would have hidden in those parts of our lives. We wouldn't have necessarily grown or taken the risks that we needed to take. So many years ago, I had a company called True North Alliance, and I was doing corporate training programs and executive coaching for some of the top companies in the world. I was working with the C-level folks at Disney and Microsoft and Home Depot, eBay and Samsung and all these major companies, and I was making really good money and I was doing really good work. And I went to Bali. I took about 3 months off and I went to Bali to write a program. I wanted to write an online program that I could then sell to and deliver to these companies. It would be a tool that they could guide themselves through as teams to really enhance their communication, their connection, their intimacy, and their creativity within these companies. And as I was writing it, I kept coming upon that what I really wanted to talk about was love. What I really wanted to talk about was the spiritual dynamic of being a more richly alive human being. Exploring the full dynamic range of what it is to be in this human experience as a spiritual being. And I kept realizing that wasn't going to fly in a lot of the ways that for companies, individuals, yes, but not entire teams to move them through the awakening to themselves that was really calling to me. So I never wrote the program. I think I wrote a modified one. I came home and I had a kind of a modified thing that I was playing with, and I worked on that for a while. But what happened was, as soon as I got home from Bali, all of my work dried up. Within, I'd say, about 3 months, all of it, it just went away. And of course, that was hugely disconcerting. It was hugely disturbing. I didn't want that to happen. It certainly threatened me financially. It turned out I survived. Had that not happened, I wouldn't be doing the work that I'm doing today. I am so on purpose and in my love and doing the work that is most richly alive for me, and that wouldn't have happened. I was making good money and I was doing good work, so I felt good about myself. I felt like I was making a difference in people's lives and I was making good money doing it. And had that not been taken away, I would have stayed in it. Now, I don't know if I would have stayed in it indefinitely, but I definitely would have stayed in it longer than I needed to. That gift of austerity, having that taken away from me, was exactly what motivated me to move into life coaching. The moving into life coaching, then I started to find that no matter what I was working with anybody, it kept coming to the same fundamental error. Most everybody was suffering because they were identified with their egoic conditioning, and that was running their lives, rather than awakening into their more imperishable and eternal authentic being, their authentic nature. So that guided me then to doing more spiritual development with people more than personal development, or at least adding the spiritual development to the personal development that I was doing in the life coaching. And that opened up into a whole nother realm of study and devotion in my own life that has fed and fueled and informed everything that I do now, that really carries such love in the work that I do. So the gift of austerity. Let the things fall away that need to fall away. Because only when that does fall away can you be available for stepping into what perhaps may be more aligned with your true nature, rather than what is aligned with your conditioning or your egoic self. There's a beautiful parable that goes along with this, and you may have heard it before, but I always find it's a valuable one to hear again and to remember. There's a story of a farmer, and the farmer has a son. And the son is out and he captures a Mustang, a beautiful wild Mustang. And a Mustang is very valuable. And he brings the Mustang back to the farm. And all the villagers say to the farmer, "Wow, what good fortune that your son has found and captured this beautiful Mustang. That's a valuable Mustang. What good fortune." And the farmer says, yeah, maybe. The son is then out breaking the Mustang, is training the Mustang and how to take a saddle and how to allow a rider on the Mustang. So he's training and breaking the Mustang, and in so doing, he's thrown from the back of the Mustang into the corral fence post, and he breaks his leg. It's a bad break, and the villagers say, "Oh my gosh! Oh, what terrible fortune. That's incredibly unfortunate. That's bad. This is bad." And the farmer says, "Well, yeah, maybe it happened, but yeah, maybe not." And the villagers are a bit perplexed. Like, how can you not see that this is clearly bad? About a week later, there's a war in the land. And about a week later, the army is coming through and conscripting all of the able-bodied young men to go off and die, pretty much, in this horrific war. And this young man isn't able to go because he's got this badly broken leg. And all the villagers say, "Oh, what amazing fortune. What good fortune that your son had this broken leg and wasn't able to be conscripted into this horrific war." And the farmer again looks at everyone and goes, "Yeah, maybe." And the farmer's just maintaining this beautiful attitude of equanimity and presence and of humility. Humility is huge in this type of work, of recognizing that we don't know. We don't know how things are necessarily going to turn out. We're trying to hold on to and manipulate and control a world from our fear, typically, from our sense of lack, from our sense of loss. It's beautiful when we can really come into the grace of our being and have such faith in the divine nature of our own lives, in that which we can't see coming, to step into the unknown and play and say, "I don't know what's coming, and I don't know how rough it's going to get, but I do know that no matter what happens, if I'm aligned with my strength, with my faith, with my devotion, with my wholeness, with my real authentic nature, that I'm going to be able to navigate anything with clarity and with love and with presence and with courage." And might we start to recognize that some of the things that are collapsing around us, that if we're trying to hold on to them, maybe they're too small for us now. And we don't know it. We just don't know. I had no idea when my corporate company collapsed, absolutely collapsed around me. I had no idea that it was so that I could expand into and move into something that was much more true to my nature and much more true to my true authentic purpose in this world and in this life. So perhaps that helps give a little bit of a sense of the value of the things that fall apart in our lives and allowing them to. It doesn't mean you don't try to hold on to a relationship, or you don't work with it, or you don't try to keep the business from collapsing. I certainly did. But it just means that while you're doing that, you aren't doing it out of fear. You're not doing it out of that fear of, if this collapses, I will collapse. There's a wonderful, wonderful teaching about how a bird that lands on a dry twig does not have faith in that twig not breaking. The bird doesn't land on each twig and think to itself, all right, this is a good twig. I hope this one doesn't break. It's got faith in itself. It just knows its capabilities. It knows its ability. It knows that it's going to be fine, that it can fly. So it's not worried so much about the conditions. It's not worried so much about everything that it lands upon needing to stay stable. It recognizes it may not. The faith isn't in the object. It's not in the thing. The faith is in ourselves. All right, a few more things I wanted to... Oh, yeah, so I want to give a couple of steps. Some steps around when you start to recognize that the things that you were counting on are starting to shift. You're starting to recognize that the ground underneath your feet is shifting and that things are changing. And maybe things are starting to fall away or collapse around you. What can you do to really be present with that and meet that moment and that experience? And the first invitation is to reconnect with you. Reconnect with your ground of being. Through your meditation practice, through your different modalities that you may have for coming into your peace, reconnect with you. Not your egoic identity, but with your ground of being, your sense of stability, your sense of self. And if you don't have that, if that's shaky for you, if it's not so available for you, reach out to me. Let's do some work together. Let's help you really enliven and awaken your imperishable essence, so you can be like that bird that knows itself. It's so in its nature, confidently and peacefully and gracefully, that the branch breaks. All right, no problem. I'm okay. So the first step is to reconnect with ourselves through our journaling, through our meditations, through our most honest relationships, the people we can go to really examine ourselves and help get a reflection as to who we really are and the strength and the faith that we have within us. So first step is reconnect. The second step is curiosity. This is a really beautiful step. The curiosity is to play with, to allow yourself to play with, all right, what if this does fall apart? Typically what we do is, oh God, what if this falls apart? And it'll be bad like this and it'll be bad like this. We just look at all the really horrible nightmare scenarios that we can imagine if this relationship or job or opportunity or life condition falls apart. The invitation here is to be curious and playful, to really feel into, well, what if it did? What if it did? What might be some of the opportunities? What might open up? What might I be forced to do? Well, I've always wanted to travel, or I've been thinking about starting that other business, but I didn't because this business has been going okay. Well, now it's falling apart, so maybe this is the opportunity to step into this other thing. So the first step is reconnect with you. The second step is to be curious, to be playfully curious and play into what opportunities might be opening up when this part of your life is collapsing around you. And then to really allow life to be an adventure. So it's the allowing. It's the allowing that recognizes that on any adventure, you allow the next stimulating and exciting and challenging moment to arrive. It's not a pleasure cruise. It's not a tour. You're not on the tour bus with somebody saying, and on your left, you can see Fred's life going by, and on your right, you can see your own life going by. It's about being in the adventure of it. It's about moving into the unknown. So it's allowing life to be the adventure that it is. Now, here's one that is really powerful. It's about speaking your new perspective. So with yourself in your journaling or with those you love in your life, allow yourself to start to hear yourself speaking as an adventurer, speaking into, it's really difficult right now. My relationship's kind of rocky, and I don't know that it's going to maintain. I don't know that we're going to be able to hold this together. And then allow yourself to speak into the possibilities of like, wow, if this happens, that's going to be amazing. I'm going to be really in a place where I can do some deep self-examination. I'm going to be in a place of real unknown. That should be interesting. It's going to be scary. You want to own that. It's going to be scary, but I don't know, that could be really interesting. I don't know what's going to show up in my life when this happens. So allow yourself to hear yourself speaking from the perspective of curiosity, of allowing, and of exploring into what might start to open up, because this thing that has been a container in your life or has held order in your life is falling into disorder. How might I reorder my life? Well, this could be a really fascinating time, even if it's going to be hard or difficult or scary. But instead of just focusing on the hard, difficult, and scary, you can start to focus on the opportunities and the possibilities and the wonder about what's going to happen. So speak as the adventurer and hear yourself start to speak in that new language. And finally, explore. Explore then, who do you want to be? Who's the person, who's the man or woman, who's the person who needs to show up in order to navigate this with grace, with power, and with peace, and really explore what is being called from within you. Remember, on that hero's journey, Joseph Campbell's hero's journey, we find our faith, we find our strength, and we find our allies. So really take that opportunity to explore into, who do I want to be at this time of challenge? How do I want to show up? Do I want to shrink under this challenge, or do I want to find a different level of devotion and courage and grace? And if you need help, reach out for help. Find guides, find coaches, find people like myself whose passion is to help to navigate this wild, dynamic life with a bit more grace and an expansive perspective, so we can really take advantage of the fact that this life is constantly going to be arriving and falling apart and coming together and collapsing. That is the nature of a beautiful life that we get to learn through and mature through. So again, the steps are: reconnect to your own ground of being through your meditation, through your journaling. Be curious about the possibilities rather than just being fearful about the imagined horrors and dilemmas that might arise. Be curious about the possibilities. Allow yourself to really see life as an adventure, and rather than a pleasure cruise. Speak your new perspective. Speak to yourself and to others from the place of curiosity and possibility and wonder. And finally, explore. Explore who you want to be to show up in this really pivotal and transcendent moment in your life. Beautiful. So have fun navigating any collapse that is happening. If you want help or support, let me know. This is what I do. It's what I'm here for. It's my passion. It's my love. So you can go to my site at chessedwards.com, and there's some free gifts there as well. I've got links to my guided meditations. I have a wonderful emotional vocabulary builder for really helping you navigate your own internal experience. I've got a wheel of life balance that allows you to really look at your life and kind of plot what parts of your life need more attention and what parts of your life are doing just fine. And I even have a little acid and alkaline food chart for tracking what foods and beverages in your life are going to create a more alkaline, healthy experience within you as opposed to a more acid experience. So those are some free gifts that are available on my site. As well, if you like this video, please do give it a thumbs up. And if you haven't subscribed to the channel, please do so. Thank you for being here. Enjoy the ride. Know that a lot of things you think are under control aren't. But what you are in control of is your internal experience and your awakening into your authentic nature of being, which is already at peace and already perfectly capable of handling anything that comes your way. All right, blessings. We'll see you next time.